Hi, Jill. Welcome to the Grow and Connect podcast.
Hi, Igor. Thank you so much for inviting me. Really looking forward to our chat today.
Great. Well, let's start off by you maybe telling us a little bit about your journey and how you got to where you are today.
Okay, thanks, Igor. Yeah, I can talk about this for quite a long time, so I'll cut it quite short. I now run a company called Natural Talent, which is a consultancy specializing in executive business coaching and leadership development, career coaching, stress management coaching and training, transformation programs, talent assessment tools. And how I got there, a lot of people say to me that they think I was born a coach. I kind of feel that as well because my mother was a teacher, but she did a lot of coaching. She was almost like an informal coach. The great thing was I was really fortunate. My father was working at one point for a US sales company, and they were training him in all the positive mental attitude. So I had a really great values sort of led upbringing, and then I took that with me sort of across my education, and then set up my company in 2003. So I've been coaching and mentoring for over 2 decades, and I had a commercial start to my career, my professional career within the airline industry. That was in sales, marketing, client management with companies like Air France, KLM and the BBC. So that helped me understand global organizations, challenges, that kind of thing, to bring that commercial element, which has been really helpful. So yeah, a really great journey so far, still enjoying it very much, like the challenge, and long may it continue.
So, what first drew you into executive and leadership coaching?
Yeah.
Why did you make that transition?
Great question. Yeah, so I guess it was really, it's over 25 years ago. It's all gone very, very quickly. But I joined a company called SHL. They are a global consultancy, and they specialize in psychometric testing for sort of talent assessment, but also leadership development. So there I was trained really across the board in kind of human behavior, organizational psychology, and it really interested me, which was the reason that I joined them. And that led me to really want to do that for myself and to use the experience, the expertise, but also a lot of my experience, as I say, my early career experience. So yeah, that was probably the shift, as I say, unbelievably 25 years ago, Igor. It's gone very quickly.
So, over the 25 years that you've been a coach, how has the approach to coaching or the way that you maybe help clients, has that changed at all over the time that you've been in it?
Yeah, a great question again. Thanks, Igor. So it's changed beyond belief. When I set out working for myself, so that was 23 years ago, almost 24 years ago, incredibly, there were very, very few executive coaches around, very few business coaches, and in fact, very few career coaches. Coaching was a real speciality, it was a niche. And in order to be able to coach, you usually then had to have a background within HR, psychology, maybe leadership, maybe industry. And of course, over the last 10 years, 15 years in particular, coaching has just expanded. Coaching's everywhere. You can get a coach to lose weight. You can get a coach to improve your leadership skills. I mean, it's everywhere. So what I've seen is a huge explosion in the need for coaching, but also in terms of the amount of coaches that are around. A lot of my previous clients have set up as coaches, and around the whole kind of leadership and personal development piece. Coaching has now got this whole kind of industry around it where you've got accrediting organizations, if I can get that out, which is great. So it means that you can get qualifications, you can get accredited, but also there's a lot of support for coaches in terms of sales funnels, all that kind of thing. The sad thing is, I think from my perspective, what I'm seeing is that it should all be about the client. It shouldn't be so much about the coach sort of self-promoting, having the glossy frameworks and driving for too much scaling, etc. It should really be about the client. So that's my concern, that the client may get lost in the whole kind of noise and this huge kind of industry that's being created.
And what are some of the common challenges that your clients come to you with?
Yeah, again, a really good question. Thank you, Igor. So, obviously, with leaders, a lot of that is kind of how to be inspirational, how to go from like being a senior manager to being an inspiring visionary leader, how to align, like their team with the vision, the mission, the business objectives, but also personally how to like improve their executive presence, improve their communication skills. Change is huge, as you know, at the moment. Change is constant, but in particular, I think the last year with the rise of AI, change is just everywhere. So really helping leaders to navigate change, uncertainty, but also cope with pressure, stress management, resilience, that kind of thing, improve their communication skills, their leadership and people management skills, as well as trying to prioritize everything because there's so much noise around. So yeah, really challenging, but really enjoyable and rewarding.
Can we dive into that, into some of those challenges a little bit? So let's say, someone was a middle manager and now is, becoming at a forefront of leading a team or a division within a company. And you mentioned that those individuals need to have sort of a mindset shift to become the visionary to inspire people. So, can you talk about how an individual, maybe some initial steps that someone could take to become that leader, to become that visionary?
Yeah, completely. Because a lot of the work that I do around executive coaching is getting sort of senior managers up to the C-suite, for example, director level, VP level, up into the C-suite, but also individuals who are looking for promotion. So, yeah, I mean, lots and lots of tools and techniques, as you can imagine. I've mentioned communication skills is really important. Having what we call executive presence, as you know, that's really crucial. So to stop being like an operational, functional people manager, but to actually start operating, looking like a visionary leader, looking like a senior leader, but also being really strategic, not just being focused on the day-to-day, the operational firefighting, but actually to be strategic, to be able to look ahead, and really implement the strategic priorities for the organization. So there's usually sort of three strands to that. It's the individual development, it's also the team development, of course, trying to get people to take on extra work, sort of through delegation, of course, empowerment, and then there's the business objectives, of course, and trying to scale the business, grow the business if possible. I know there's a lot of cost-cutting measures at the moment, but looking at those three elements really is really key for any leader that's going up to the next level.
Thank you for that insight. You mentioned you work with clients around resilience and stress management. Are there certain tools or approaches that are you found to be effective, when dealing with stress?
Yeah, really good question. Thank you again, Igor. So I'm a big fan of the change curve, which you probably have seen, also the Kubler-Ross change curve, but also it's sometimes referred to as the grief curve, and it shows, we're just going along. It's like this U-bend, so we're just going along, day to day, doing what we normally do, and then suddenly something might hit. So it could be, in work, it could be you're laid off from your role, for example, or it could be that something affects the business, goodness me, major disaster, a fire. I've seen practically every scenario, I think, over the last few years. And of course, there's a big shock. We usually go into shock. We start denying the process, especially if you've lost your job, for example. And then you kind of start traveling along this change curve thinking, oh my goodness, this is all being done to me. I'm not in control of this. Starting to blame yourself, blaming others, blaming the organization, the government, whoever, geopolitical issues, you name it. And then slowly you start realizing, okay, I can make some decisions here. I have to accept this. And I start moving on, making some decisions, problem solving. And usually what happens once I talk people through that, they realize that they tend to end up in a better state than maybe when they started, which is really difficult. But I talk a lot about, it's not so much about resilience, which is bouncing back after a setback or a failure. It's almost like bounce back with renewed skills, renewed rigor, with new optimism, but armed with those tools and techniques. And I've written an ebook on resilience, and there's lots and lots of tips, tricks, tools, techniques in there. That's all online with Access Book Boon, so that's available to download, even on a 30-day free trial. So that's really helpful for a lot of people to go through exercises. I always say it's like building that backbone of steel, where you think, right, I can deal with whatever hits me, basically.
And so, you know, outside of individuals being laid off, right? So do you find that executives or leaders, they come to you when they're experiencing the stress from work, and that's, what you help them manage? And, do those factors that stress them out sort of coincide with you do to propel them forward? Is it I guess my question is it a lack of knowledge or a lack of experience perhaps in their position that's causing, the stress?
Again, good question. Thanks, Igor. So obviously it does depend, but for example, quite often as part of executive coaching, I mean, I have lots of different threads and strands to my kind of coaching and mentoring, but quite often you may be involved in an executive coaching program, of course, and then suddenly, life is complex. There might be a curveball, which is a key life event. So that could be a divorce, it could be moving house, it could be a partner that's lost their role, that go on. So as part of executive coaching, quite often we talk about stress management techniques and resilience. So that's one scenario. Obviously losing your job is really, really stressful. So that's another part of when resilience sort of training, coaching comes into play as well. Sometimes individuals are referred to me. So maybe the people function, the HR function will say, this was during the COVID, years that seemed to go on for so long. HR and people functions would refer individuals to me, especially like the frontline staff. I dealt a lot with healthcare in those years in particular. Or it could be individuals, as you say. An individual might approach me and say, look, I've got a new role, I've been promoted, it's fantastic, but my goodness, I'm now managing like global teams, cross-functional teams, remote teams, and I need some help, please, to deal with the pressure. So I always say, look, we can all develop resilience. It's a skill that we can all learn. It's complex, but with tools and techniques, we can all manage kind of upsets, failures, setbacks, perceived failures as well, much better. And then you've got those skills that can help you both in work and outside work as well.
Do you have any favorite success stories or favorite clients that you worked with where you've seen, just a phenomenal change of, a before and after that made you feel really good about what you're doing and helping?
Oh, well, yeah, great. I mean, as you can appreciate, Igor, unfortunately, most of my work is very confidential because I deal a lot with senior execs and across the globe as well. I'm fortunate to work across the globe. So especially at senior level, it's pretty confidential. So I always pride myself on not disclosing confidentiality. But I've had a lot of really positive responses, really good coaching and mentoring engagements. I've come to the end of a few because we're at year end now, and you can see that absolute positive change in people's behaviors. They look different, they act different, they're calmer, they feel that they've got a really strong leadership and management toolkit so that they can manage themselves with emotional intelligence, their emotions, they can manage their team better, they're more strategic. If they're in sales, for example, they've got those techniques to help grow the business as well. So you can see that physically the change, and in terms of behavior, and I studied advanced behavior science as well, and you can see that behavior change. So I'm happy to say most clients really do make a massive shift in the way they behave, the way they come across, and then you get feedback from their line managers, even if that's like the CEO or the chairman or the board, for example. So quite often we get that through 360 feedback, or like pulse surveys, that kind of thing. So we always measure where is the individual at the beginning and then where are they at the end, and we have usually a three-way meeting with their line manager at the end of the coaching program. So yeah, lots of success stories, great success stories for individuals that have wanted to get to the C-suite, so that's been really rewarding as well. And then you see people develop. LinkedIn is great for keeping in contact with people, and you see how they progress through their careers. So yeah, lots of success stories over 20 odd years.
That's great. So you have meetings with your clients and the individuals to whom they report. So do you have a lot of instances where a leader maybe sort of recommends the person under him to 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 work with you? Is that
Um,
something that
Sometimes that happens, Igor. Usually, what happens is, again, it's maybe the line manager who might be pretty senior, as I say, who talks to the people function, maybe the chief people officer, the HR director, for example, and says, look, I think this individual could benefit from some coaching because they've just stepped into their role, or we need them to succession plan and replace one of the senior managers. So I tend to get a referral, and we it's quite often best practice to start with a three-way meeting at the beginning. So it's like the person that's going to receive the coaching, their line manager, it doesn't matter how senior they are, sometimes with somebody from the people function, so that we can agree what are the development objectives, what are the strengths. Some of this might be on the back of a personality assessment, as I say, or a 360 feedback. And then we provide what we call a smart executive coaching action plan, and that's what we start building on. We usually have a halfway stage after a few coaching sessions. How are we progressing? Get some feedback again from the line manager. Usually it's pretty regular anyway, with the coachee and their line manager having regular meetings. But at the end, it's always good to have a wrap-up session with the line manager again. Usually not HR at that phase. Sometimes another mini 360 feedback or just an anonymous survey. That does tend to align as well with like end of year reviews, that kind of thing, maybe engagement pulse surveys as well, so that we benchmark the results so that they can see the return on investment as well from the coaching. So yeah, lots of different ways of working, but that works really well to make sure that the individual that's receiving the coaching is obviously accountable as well.
okay? And what do you find most rewarding about working with clients and seeing this progression of individuals go through?
Yeah, again, great question. I find it all rewarding, to be honest, Igor. I love what I do. I'm really passionate about what I do, and to see the behaviour change from individuals is great. You know, sometimes you just in the past, I've walked past a client at reception in a corporate organisation because I was like, wow, you know, you've really worked hard. I always give people interim coaching assignments to work on, so looking for behaviour change and just seeing how different they are, how more confident they are, but also getting the feedback from their line managers and maybe HR or from 360 feedback is really, really worth it. Makes every day worth it. I think as well, seeing people who I've helped to get back into work if they've been laid off, and then I help them to get a new job. That is just life changing for them, and you know I'm getting them, because it's the end of the year. I'm getting a lot of great feedback at the moment saying thank you so much. That really makes everything, you know, hard work, maybe long hours. I don't work all day every day, and I manage the time across time zones, but it is really all worthwhile. And like I say, keeping in contact with clients. I'm still in contact with clients from like 20 years ago and seeing their career progression. So really, really rewarding, definitely.
Great. So looking ahead, where do you see the biggest opportunities and shifts in leadership and executive coaching, especially now with the emergence of AI? Is that a tool that you use?
Yeah, I mean, I was just about to say that is the big shift, isn't it? And we've seen it sort of over the last year, in particular, 18 months. So I'm exploring it. I've had some great meetings with some big companies, especially over in the US. I haven't got an avatar yet, but I'm having a meeting in the new year to see if I can clone myself, which would be, I've always said I need to clone myself. So who knows, that might be something for next year. I love AI. I know a lot of people are very nervous about AI, but I use it all day, every day now for a lot of my work, and it's just so time consuming. Sorry, time. It saves so much time. Yes, it's not always right, and I think with coaching and within the coaching environment, you have to be really careful because people say, "Oh, I've got a coaching app," or whether it's an avatar or an online tool or whatever. Of course, especially at senior level, and as you mentioned with leadership development, excuse me, an AI tool or can't actually subtly see those nuances. For example, they haven't got the whole context within an organization. So a lot of the individuals that I deal with might have really major sort of organizational challenges, really complex scenarios, and AI can't actually understand that to coach an individual as yet. I'm sure this is going to come. So most of the thought at the moment is that certainly at senior leadership level, there'll still be a need for seasoned, veteran executive coaches, really experienced, like myself, with lots and lots of expertise and lots of tools and techniques, so that they can actually help senior leaders. I think at maybe the lower end of the scale in terms of individuals, team leaders, maybe even first line managers, there will be far more use of AI, I'm sure. So yeah, I'm exploring it. It's quite exciting, but I know that you've probably seen it. There are some real risks with it. We've seen some really sad stories of where, in particular, the younger generation are using AI, but then not getting the right or the necessary support that they need. So there is that danger with coaching as well. But yeah, I can see the future being like the hybrid approach, working in tandem and in parallel, and that will be really beneficial. I'm pretty sure. So yeah, exciting times, and you have to move with the times. So I'm looking forward to seeing what my avatar looks like.
Great. Well, thank you for coming on the show, Jill. It's been a pleasure speaking to you, and thank you for sharing your wisdom.
Absolute pleasure, Igor. Thank you so much for asking me, and yeah, I wish you all the very, very best. Thanks for the opportunity.
But before I forget, if someone wants to get in touch with you and they're listening to this podcast, what's the best place to do that?
Yeah, okay, thanks. Yeah, so you can contact me via the website, and that's www.natural-talent.com, and there's a contact form there. There's also lots of resources, lots of insights there. And then you can also get hold of me on LinkedIn. So that's Jill, Jill, and then Maidment, Maidment. So at Natural Talent, that's on LinkedIn. You can email me info@natural-talent.com. I'm on social media as well, Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook, and X as well. So lots and lots of different ways of getting in contact with me. So yeah, and also Book Boon, Access Book Boon for all the books, virtual classrooms, and audio talks as well. They're on there. There's about 35, I think, at the moment. So yeah, lots of different ways.
Great. Well, I'll be sure to put all those links underneath this video as well, so our listeners and viewers can access them there. Thank you, Jill.
Great. Thank you so much, Igor.